fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal is spreading across Europe, with multiple investigations now underway. Authorities are scrutinising some of the names caught up in the latest batch of files. They also contain claims that Epstein was involved in espionage. Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, the billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein has been dead nearly 7 years, but the impact of his crimes lingers on, as well as who was in his broad network of associates. From royalty to politicians and business leaders, Epstein's contacts book was a veritable who's who of some of the world's most influential people. Being named in the files does not indicate wrongdoing, but serious questions are now being asked about who knew what and when.
From beyond the grave, convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein haunts Europe's elite. Royalty, politicians and business tycoons all appear in the latest Epstein files released by the US government. While being named does not indicate wrongdoing, the disclosures have prompted resignations and public apologies across Europe. In Britain, police are investigating its former ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, for allegedly passing on market-sensitive government information to Epstein during the 2008 global financial crisis. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is under pressure to resign for giving him the role. More compromising photos of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor have emerged, and police are investigating claims he leaked confidential documents to Epstein when he was UK's trade envoy. In Norway, the Crown Princess Mette-Marit issued what she called a profound apology. After it emerged, she exchanged messages with Epstein over a 3-year period. While in France, former Minister Jack Lang has quit as president of the Arab World Institute over his contact with Epstein. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk has claimed Epstein may have been a Russian spy, as the files allegedly expose a link to the Kremlin. Russia has brushed aside the claims. Documents also allege Epstein had connections with Israel's intelligence agency Mossad, including an FBI document that says he is an Israeli agent. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he did not work for Israel. Epstein's victims, young women and girls sexually exploited by this powerful billionaire, continue to seek answers. As investigations continue into Epstein's web of connections and who knew what about his crimes.
Well, let's bring in our guests. I'm delighted to say, joining me here in the studio, we have Adam Bolton. He is a political journalist and broadcaster, and Alexander Vasiliev, an espionage historian and a former Russian intelligence officer. And joining us from London, we have Richard Fitzwilliams. He is a well-known royal commentator. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Adam, to you first of all, our thoughts, as always in this case, are with the victims of Epstein. He's been dead nearly 7 years, and this story just keeps dominating headlines, from royal families in Europe to governments to allegations of espionage. This is not going away.
Well, I think arguably, had he lived rather than what is said to be suicide when he was in prison, this whole affair might have gone away rather more quickly. What has happened, of course, is that in America, the aftermath of Jeffrey Epstein has become a major political football with both sides at various stages demanding the publication of the so-called Epstein files. This is information that was gathered in preparation for the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. And the MAGA movement behind Donald Trump was very keen on getting that released, because a lot of the famous names were people they didn't like who were associated with Epstein, such as the Clintons famously and Bill Gates. Then Trump got elected and suddenly seemed a lot more reluctant to release these files. And so there's been a lot of pressure from Congress and indeed from Democrats to release these files. So information has come out, most of it relating to the 90s and the noughties, and a little bit after that. And massive data dumps, which of course now with the aid of AI and everything else, people are going through and finding incredibly embarrassing stuff. And in this country, it's led to the absolute downfall of Peter Mandelson, who was, of course, a very key figure in the Labour Party, but who was appointed ambassador to Washington, but was exposed, and subsequent dumps from the Epstein files have done even more damage to his reputation. And the other person very much caught there is Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew.
We'll come back to him, Adam. Alexander, your expertise in Russian intelligence, there is a lot of commentary that Epstein was a paid spy, that he was working for the Kremlin. Do you think this was a big, sophisticated Russian operation?
No, I don't think so. Let's talk about the KGB theory of espionage, right? Science. It tells us that there are three bases for recruitment: ideological, material, and moral psychological, right? Ideological doesn't apply to Jeffrey Epstein because Russia is not a socialist country anymore. It's a capitalist country which doesn't have any ideology. Material, Jeffrey Epstein was a very rich man. Right?
But where was the money coming from? Was he paid to begin with?
No, I don't think any intelligence service could pay him so much money. And for what exactly? Now, there is a moral psychological factor left, which everything which is not ideological or material fits into that category. But what was it? Was he secretly in love with Vladimir Putin? Well, Vladimir Putin is not a teenage girl, never was. So I very much doubt that he worked for the Russians at all. Why would he? And frankly, and maybe we can talk about it later, I think he was too big to be an agent of any intelligence service, including Mossad, which is also a popular topic.
I just want Adam's thoughts on the espionage theory.
Well, Jeffrey Epstein was a networker. He was someone who played people to his advantage, either gathering material that was compromising on them, that bound them closer to him and had the potential for blackmail, or in some cases, having the opportunity to destroy them, which of course would contribute to disarray and chaos in the West, which I think is one of the things which the Putin regime is trying to foment. But I think looking at the record, it looks like he was fundamentally a money launderer and someone who, that's where his money came from. It wasn't necessarily all his, but he took big cuts out of it, and in exchange for, frankly, linking people up, linking rather boring bankers up with glamorous girls or glamorous intellectuals and all the rest of it. That said, you know, there is this case of the false passport in a false name, which was found in his papers. There is stuff in the Epstein files talking about his links with Russia and the FSB. I'm not saying necessarily true, but they're there. And in fact, if you go back, for example, to a very long piece done in the New York Times about where did Jeffrey Epstein get his money, at times he implied that he had connections to the Israeli intelligence service and also to the British intelligence service, strangely enough, although the British newspapers have not really been following that lead in particular. So this is a man who was a spider who built webs. I'm quite sure there were exchanges with Russia involved. I mean, people appealed to him to help them with visas to get to Russia. He clearly took a lot of girls out of Russia and Eastern Europe. So did he have dealings with people like that? Yes, but was he a spy? Actually working for the Russians, I rather doubt.
Thanks, Adam. Let's bring Richard in. Richard, good to see you on Roundtable again. Adam says Epstein wove a web and people got caught up in it. The most high-profile name, of course, is Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor from the UK royal family. Where do you think this story is going for him now?
Well, I don't see, or have frequently not seen, how much worse it could get. But so far as the last week, say, I mean, who would have thought we'd have had two statements yesterday from the royal family? We had the Prince and Princess of Wales, and this, of course, was on the eve of Prince William's visit to Saudi Arabia, which was very, very significant. sympathy with the victims and also expressing deep concern about the allegations. And then later that day, to everyone's surprise, from Buckingham Palace, we heard that basically they will be helping, as well they should, Thames Valley Police or any police force that wish to investigate the matter further, various matters. There are two at the moment. Charges will possibly follow, who knows? One of them is this issue we've been discussing, possible links of Epstein with the Russians and also with Mossad and the various rumors that were circulated. I certainly didn't know anything about the links or possible links with the British security services. But what appears to have occurred was when Epstein was special representative for British trade, special envoy from 2001 to 2011, apparently he leaked materials, sensitive material, when he was in Vietnam, when he was in China and so forth, to Epstein. Indeed, there seems to be, for example, a suggestion of investment in Helmand Province, Afghanistan and so forth.
Richard, can I ask, Richard, we've seen King Charles get heckled repeatedly in public over several days now. How do you think the King will be feeling privately, knowing that his brother has become this pariah, and for the UK monarchy to survive, they have to cut him loose?
Well, regarding the survival of the monarchy, there have been comparisons to the abdication. I'm not sure I go along with that. The other comparison is obviously with the death of Princess Diana and the monarchy's response. So far as the survival of the monarchy was concerned, I don't think, therefore, that its survival is at an issue, but there's no question whatsoever that there's a very, very serious issue when it comes to transparency, because the palace must have information. I mean, we've heard that the two police investigations ongoing, one of them involves, for example, flying in a girl, supposedly Epstein did this, to spend time with Andrew at Royal Lodge. There's also a possible case coming from the United States involving a stripper.
Thanks, Richard. I want to get back to Adam. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Richard. And I should say at this point, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor denies any wrongdoing in relation to the allegations against them. Adam, it's not just the UK royals. The Norwegians are caught up in this as well, because the Crown Princess Mette-Marit, she sent some interesting emails to Epstein and had been a guest as well.
Yeah, and Epstein was an international networker. We've already had Jacques Lang, who was a French minister. He too has had to resign from some of his positions. I mean, I think something has happened which is quite significant in terms of a change of public opinion. At the time that Epstein was mingling with all these people, you know, in as much as anybody knew about his relations with his well-connected friends, it was, well, you know, they obviously want to like knowing a rich New York banker and he's a man who's a bit sleazy. But a lot of people wrote that off. Now, I think now there's been a change in the mood, particularly with the rising generations who regard the abuse of the girls and the women as utterly unacceptable, but also regard people who were friends of someone who was abusing girls as utterly unacceptable. They say they should have known, they should have broken off relations. And that is what's caught up a lot of these people, including Peter Mandelson, who are not accused themselves of abusing girls. And there's no doubt that one of the things which Epstein did was encourage a kind of sort of raunchy conversation between his friends. So we got Peter Mandelson, you know, talking about well-hung young men and all that kind of stuff. And you know, it looks terrible, but people feel much more strongly about that in the present international climate than they do now. Although it's important to say, just briefly, that is a problem for Peter Mandelson. It's a bigger problem for Prince Andrew, because the suspicion is that he himself was involved in the abuse of girls. And that's the allegation, although he denies it. But then there's this secondary issue, which has only just emerged, and which, frankly, has shocked everyone who knows Peter Mandelson, everyone that I know connected to New Labour, which is this idea of him passing, as a minister, confidential information to this guy.
You've known Mandelson a long
I've known
time.
Mandelson over 40 years.
Yeah.
And
How shocked are you?
absolutely shocked. I mean, the roof and the ceiling and the sky has fallen in on Peter Mandelson. He only has himself to blame because he put himself forward for this American ambassadorship and was not frank with anybody about the nature of his relationship with Epstein, let alone saying, oh yeah, I passed him documents. And now we've got Prince Andrew in the same position, passing documents. And, you know, if they end up in prison in this country, it will be because of misbehaviour in a public office. And you know, that is a crime. And the police are investigating, the Metropolitan Police investigating Peter Mandelson, Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew being investigated by the Thames Valley Police. And there's a real possibility that could result in prosecutions.
Thanks, Adam. Alexander, I want to go back to your country, Russia. Poland has now launched an investigation into their belief that he was working for Russia. What's your take on the Polish investigation?
Well, it doesn't surprise me that it comes from Poland. Poland is not exactly a friend of Russia. The thing is, the allegations about the Russian involvement is based on the story about Russian girls or women who were used as honey traps by the KGB in the good old days of the Soviet Union. But the situation is very different. The KGB in the old times did that, but they preferred to use not prostitutes, not hookers from the street. They preferred to use more sophisticated women like actresses, models, teachers, interpreters, librarians. Because if you work on a foreign diplomat or a businessman, you need a woman who is not only physically attractive, but also interesting as a person. And even the KGB couldn't force the women to do that. The women wanted to do that for a number of reasons. Those reasons don't exist now in Russia. Russia is a very different country. And one of the reasons was that, well, women were simply interested in dating foreign men because it was a Soviet dictatorship. We couldn't travel freely abroad. Very few people could go abroad.
Put the women to one side, Alexander. Why was Epstein in and out of Russia like a yo-yo? If he wasn't spying for Russia, why did he travel so much to Russia?
He traveled everywhere. I mean, look, I can't see any reason for him to spy for anyone. He worked for himself.
But whether he was working with Russian intelligence or not, he was certainly recruiting girls in Russia and Eastern Europe.
Yes, but how many? The names of the girls in public circulation, if we look at them, they were Americans. Virginia Jeffrey was American from California. There was a model agency in France. There was a woman from Slovenia, a model from Latvia, a woman from Belarus. So how many Russian girls were there?
Thank you. Richard, back to you. Just looking at the UK royal situation in all of this, one name that I think the British royal family will be very concerned about is Sarah Ferguson and her friendship with Epstein. She has always been in the headlines for never having enough money. Enough is never enough for Sarah Ferguson. How big a problem do you think this now is for the House of Windsor, that she's rattling around with no great purpose? And she clearly knows a lot of stuff.
I think that's a very important point, and I think it's something that's been played down. Indeed, I think one of the mistakes that King Charles has made was the so-called rehabilitation of Sarah Ferguson. Some 3 Christmases ago, she was with the royal family, and it was thought at that time that she had, so to speak, bounced back. I use the phrase deliberately because this was what a lot of British people liked about her. They saw someone who was involved in deplorable scandals and could always, it appeared, be, so to speak, as she would put it, reborn. The point, unfortunately, was the question of the money. And it appears that her relationship with Epstein, and one could use that term, I mean, if you look at some of the emails, she compares him to a brother. We know, and this has been known for some time, that she borrowed took £15,000 from him to pay off a specific debt, and nobody has been able specifically to prove the actual amount, but it is thought to run into millions. She denied this, of course, but the facts of the matter are that it's even been rumoured that it was Sarah Ferguson who introduced Andrew to Epstein. This we don't know, but what we do know is that she is at, putting it mildly, a loose end. Her charity appears to have collapsed. There are no charities that wish links with her that I know, because a large number severed ties. And someone in that position, you're quite right, is very dangerous. Could they write a book? She was into American chat shows on Oprah and various others. She has an international profile, but the problem is that she is irretrievably, as I see it, linked to Epstein. And in that situation, I don't think anyone reputable would touch her.
Thanks, Richard. I want to come back to Adam Bolton here in the studio. Adam, I want to talk about the British Prime Minister now, Keir Starmer, who has always struck me as a very fair and decent character who has tried his best in everything he's done. Could he now be brought down because of the trust he placed in Mandelson?
Well, he very nearly was brought down by the revelations about Peter Mandelson this week. He has, for the time being now, got his cabinet to say that they continue to support him. But I mean, the problem is the collateral damage which Epstein is doing to people who weren't directly involved, like the rest of the royal family, other than Ferguson and Andrew, and to the Labour Party through Peter Mandelson, is absolutely massive, and it feeds into other tensions. And, you know, basically speaking, their Labour Party has always been split on Peter Mandelson, who was a key architect of New Labour. He had worked his way back into a close relationship with Morgan McSweeney, who was his protege and was the chief of staff. The head of press, Tim Allen, was also someone from the New Labour days. And basically, even although Tim Allen and Morgan McSweeney had absolutely nothing to do with Epstein, they're now out. They've had to leave their jobs, along with Peter Mandelson. And those people within the Labour Party who've always had ideological differences with New Labour are pressing home their advantage to try and take the party to the left. And the question was whether Keir Starmer, getting rid of Keir Starmer, who has been doing badly for a load of other reasons, would be part of that fight. And what's been decided is, for now, it won't. But if the fortunes of the Labour Party don't improve in elections, I think it's certain that Keir Starmer will go. And one of the things that will be laid at his door is that a critical misjudgment in promoting Peter Mandelson to Washington.
Thank you. Alexander, back to the espionage. Mossad has been mentioned in dispatches with regard to this man. Do you think he might have been working an Israeli operation as well?
I doubt that for two reasons. First reason, as I said before, Epstein was too big to be an operative or an agent of any intelligence service. He operated on a much higher level, and he was a very rich man, right? And second reason is more practical. In his correspondence with Ehud Barak, who was
Prime Minister of Israel.
Prime Minister of Israel and the Defense Minister of Israel, he called Mossad by its real name, Mossad. You know, operatives and agents normally don't do that. For instance, in the KGB, we never called the KGB. We called it Vedomstvo, which means institution. And we never called the KGB intelligence service. We called it our service. I know that in the CIA, they do the same thing. They call it the company, the agency, or Langley. So I very much doubt that if he was an agent or an operative of Mossad, he would use the word Mossad in his emails, which are actually just ordinary emails. That's why, these are two reasons why I don't really believe that he worked for Mossad. He worked for Israel, for the state of Israel, sometimes maybe, because he was connected to a highly influential, to Ehud Barak, but not for Mossad.
Just final point, Alexander, to you. People in Russia must be lapping this up and laughing.
Yes, they are. They also love it when people like Prime Minister of Poland blames the Russians for everything, because these people, they don't understand that they're actually boosting the image of the Russian intelligence services. They are creating their image as very powerful international organizations. The guys love it. I'm sure Putin loves it. So thank you very much.
On that note, Alexander Vasiliev, thank you very much to you. Adam Bolton, Richard Fitzwilliams as well in London. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Andy Brady, and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.